So yeah, how do you want to start this? What do you have in mind?
I made a couple of notes.
Do you need to
the things that I want.
Do you need to introduce yourself first? Like, do people know who you are? They should, right?
No one wants to listen to that.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like if you're here for a reason. Everybody's heard me give. I talk about myself enough, and I'm sure a big part of this show is going to be me trying not to talk about myself.
All right.
And so I don't know how much of an introduction people really need. I feel like if you're here, you've heard that story before.
You're listening to the Myerson Line. Life cycles, bicycles, fast lines, and hot takes.
All right, we are officially and formally live.
Yeah.
Our first show of the Myerson Line podcast. Spencer Haugh joining me, both of us in Boston here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
And Flynn, of course. I forgot. He's in his sleep suit.
It's pretty nice.
Basically keeps him from squirming. What's up, bud? Look, there you are. Ah! Wow, Spencer's waving at you.
He doesn't get it. Oh, wait.
He gets it. Look, yeah. Wow. He's psyched. He loves it. All right, bud. It's bedtime. You ready to go to bed? All right, Mama. My lovely assistant.
You're deep in the master's lifestyle now.
I know, right? I had to hand off the baby for us to start our show.
So, well then.
What about you? Should we talk about you? We should introduce you.
I'm the sidekick for tonight, I guess. I'm the guinea pig, as it were. We're working out all the kinks here on the podcast to make sure everything runs smoothly for when you get actual guests on the show. So,
yeah, we needed someone popular, but not too popular. We couldn't.
Yeah, you don't want to blow your load right away.
Yeah, like people suggested Rasan Bahati as a guest, for instance. I think that would be amazing. There's no question that I will have Rasan on the show. I think that will be great, but you can't do that for your first show. Let's lower everybody's expectations. Have everyone set their expectations low for tonight.
Spencer level here, so that we can work your way up later.
It's our first time on Blab for both of us. We're still definitely learning how to use this and see how it works for us. And I think it's going to be great. But everybody should be. It's the soft opening, right?
So we should explain Blab, I guess. Then is for people that listen later. What we're doing is doing basically a video conference that's live that people can tune into and listen to. They can send us chat messages, questions, comments, anything that'll kind of help direct or steer the conversation that we end up having. And all of this is being recorded, and we're going to, stick an intro and outro on it at the end and put it up like a regular podcast later in the week. So these will come out. They'll be available to listen to at a later date if you can't tune in now. So this is all kind of new and exciting for everybody, but it's fun. It'll be fun to tune in, to be able to participate actually in the recording of the podcast. And then for people that can't make it, they can always tune in later. So.
Yeah. And so stumbling on Blab was a result of the idea with the podcast is I really wanted a live show. I didn't want to just have guests and record. I think one of the things that I enjoy about social media is the interaction and conversational aspect. So if I'm going to do a podcast, I wanted it to have that aspect essentially included. And Blab was a great way to do that. It just also meant that you had to look at our faces for a little while too, for better or for worse. So, and so, I mean, having you on the first guest, I think is only fitting. You were the one who really has been pushing me to do this. And I know lots of people have sort of been interested in it, but you were the one, you know, you're really getting things going with Wide Angle Podium. And, you know, we've been talking about that a lot. So I feel like, you know, you're the kingpin. Might as well have the kingpin on and help. You know, a lot of people I think might know you from Slow Ride podcast, among other things. And so it's a good way to let people know about Wide Angle Podium and that this will be part of that effort.
Yep. Yeah. And for those that don't know, that wideanglepodium.com is where you can find a collection of cycling related, loosely sometimes cycling related podcasts. You can also support them there. It's kind of a collective, you know, the rising tide raises all ships. We're trying to, nobody's getting rich here doing it. But hopefully we can all band together and kind of create enough of value for you guys to toss a few bucks our way here and there if you can. And, you know, if not, it's kind of like NPR, you know what I mean? Like you can listen all day if you want and nobody's forcing you to do anything, but if you like what you hear, we'd appreciate it. So yeah, the show will be part of that.
Yeah. We'd be doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, so I thought for that reason too, that this first show I've been joking, like it's a show about the show. But I actually mean that. It's we want to talk about, I think tonight, set the tone for like answer people's questions and maybe even just have a conversation and decide on some of that ourselves. But you know, what is the show going to be about? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And sort of why we're doing it. Potential topics.
I have some notes written down here, and actually that's my first question because I actually don't know what this show is going to be about. I don't know what's going on, you know, behind the glasses there. So why don't you fill us in? What are we all doing here? Like, what is this? Why are we here? What are your expectations?
Well,
what do you want it to look like?
I think that, yeah. Well, social media has been good for me. Maybe even you could say good to me. I think early in my career, before social media, it was very easy for me to be misunderstood, you know, just based solely on my appearance, especially at a time like in the 90s where my appearance was both more extreme relative to itself, but also more extreme relative to like society as a whole. And people just didn't know what to do with me or what to make of me. And I think they were always surprised if they met me and actually talked to me, what they would find out. And so social media was good because it was a way for me to tell my own story and give people a chance to get to know what I think is the real me. Even though I fuck around a lot on social media and sometimes not everyone knows when I'm joking or, you know, my sarcasm can be hard to read. And I realize I still do a fair amount of polarizing people, but, so one of the limiters of social media, especially with Twitter, like Twitter and Facebook killed my blog. You know, I used to write.
It killed everybody's blog.
It's a bummer. You know, I think, you know, my degree is in English and African-American studies. Before bike racing, I thought I would end up teaching with a certain concentration, literature and with a certain concentration, certain area. And bike racing pulled me away from all that. And now the thing that I've turned out, you know, that I'm an expert in is not necessarily literature or even African-American literature. It's bike racing, for better or worse. And, I would like, now that my professional bike racing career is over and the traveling has stopped and I'm training less, and, you know, this was all before I had a baby, of course, to write more, to take those tweets and expand on them. There are so many tweets I write that could be entire long form pieces. You know, they're it's just a little snippets of ideas and diaries that I'd love to expand on. The podcast hopefully is going to be a way to do that. Mm-hmm. I think each week there could be a current event in cycling that we want to discuss in detail. There could be something that happens on social media mm-hmm. that needs discussion, and that we use the podcast to flesh those things out. Sure. I think, I mentioned open source with Christopher Lydon as a model, a podcast or an NPR show that I really, really like. Christopher Lydon is so incredibly bright and knowledgeable about so many topics. It blows me away. He's not just prepared for his guests. Like, you can tell he knew what he was talking about. I'm sure he does his homework, right? Like any good host. Terry Gross reads her guests. If she has a novelist on, I'm sure she reads the novel during the week. I'm sure she prepares. Right. Yeah. But Christopher Lydon, that guy just seems like a voracious consumer of knowledge. I would love to attempt that, or just aspire to that. Not to compare myself to him, but he's a source of motivation and inspiration. Maybe I could do that with cycling, and just share 30 years of bike racing experience from my own perspective. But then I hope, and it sounds like this is something that people are interested in, talk about more than bike racing. I was just gonna ask. So, is this a bike racing podcast? Because we lived together for a little while, and I know there's a lot more facets to the Myerson story than just bike racing, even though that's definitely the biggest piece. It's never just about bike racing for me. Bike racing is never just about bike racing. It never has been. Bike racing has always been a metaphor for me and a vehicle for other things. And even the way that I experienced bike racing also allowed me to experience a lot of other things, go to other places. I could read about the South in books, but bike racing is what took me there. Allowed me to see those things that I had only, read about or studied in school. Bike racing got me on a plane for the first time. It got me out of my hometown. It got me to college. So yeah, I hope I can tie all those things in, and maybe we'll have shows that aren't about bike racing at all. Maybe we'll talk about music. Maybe we'll talk about books. Maybe we'll talk about politics. I would love to bring my perspective on those topics to my cycling friends, mm-hmm. so that if cycling is the thing that we have in common, that brought us together in the first place, maybe we can use that as a launching pad for talking about some of these other things. So we can send the conversation anywhere you want, but we'll kind of look at it through the lens of bike racing to some extent. Let me put it this way. When we get all of our friends together for a dinner party and we make a commitment, not to talk about bike racing because maybe there are friends or spouses that come that aren't bike racers. Yeah. What do we always end up talking about? It's inevitable. We all end up talking about bike racing for better or for worse. And so I think that will happen. That inevitability will happen here. And that tends to be enjoyable for everybody but our spouses and friends who aren't bike racers. Everybody else enjoys that. And so that's the beauty of the podcast. Yeah. We put the headphones on. They don't have to come in your corner. Yeah, exactly. Janice took the baby and shut the door. She's go play with your friends. Yeah, go be a nerd over there. Yeah. Right. So here's where we don't have to feel bad about subjecting our spouses to all the bike talk. And, perfect. For me, I always say, I always equate that with talking about work. We're not talking about bike racing, honey. We're talking about our jobs, but so this is the water cooler. Nice. This is... Yeah, right. We're at the water cooler. All right. So I think we can take that approach. I also think, I do want to have guests, and I think having guests can go a couple different ways. I think I can have a guest like you where you can come on and we can do some analysis of like the week's events in cycling or whatever Twitter drama, we happen to be currently embroiled in.
So much.
Yeah. Or I can have a guest where instead of having a conversation with that guest about those current events, like the conversation should be about the guest. Mm-hmm. Like if I have Rasan on, I have a million questions for Rasan. Mm-hmm. And I also have a sense of what I find interesting about Rasan that I would like to tease out and sort of expose people who maybe don't know him personally, expose them to and sort of get him to show that side of himself to them because I find that compelling about him. So just using him as an example. I started making a list of potential guests. It took me about 2.
I was going to say, I saw you crowdsourcing this.
I had 30 names in 2 minutes. Like it's infinite. I don't think there's any shortage of characters that I've come across and are still friends with over the years of bike racing, and some that people will know and be excited that like maybe that I have access to because they're friends of mine. But I think just as important are the people that maybe no one's met or they don't know. Mm-hmm. I'd like to tell some untold stories, maybe some less popular folks, less well-known folks who I think have, interesting, compelling stories. Maybe we'll tell some Dorchester stories,
Uh-huh.
Maybe we'll get some Brockton folks on here. We get Sully and Patty and Fitzy and Murph on here to talk about Brockton.
Hey man, it's your show. Let's do it. You got a suggestion right there in the comments here from Super Rookie. He wants.
I know. I see. I've been trying to ignore him. He's here for the party. We noticed, buddy. We see you in the comments. It might be funny to have Gadge on here as a guest, though. That's the thing. Like, if I just parade out people from my past, I don't want it to be like a nostalgia show. But
I mean, when isn't it? When isn't it with you though? I mean, not in a derogatory way.
No, I know it's funny. So it's funny you say that because like people, it's very easy to be critical of overly nostalgic people or critical of nostalgia in general. And I totally understand that, and sometimes I even side with it. But as it turns out, I'm a nostalgic person. I think because I'm a romantic person, although Janice might disagree. I'm romantic about sports. I'm romantic about places. I'm romantic about history. I'm romantic about culture. I'm romantic about music, and all those things are connected for me. And bike racing is connected to those things for me. So bringing people from my past and my bike racing history onto the show, while it may feel like nostalgia, those are the stories I want to tell, or I want to shed light on other people's stories.
Like you were saying, it doesn't always have to be necessarily your story that you're telling. You can have other people on, to tell their story through your medium now. Maybe you were there, maybe you experienced it, maybe you didn't, but, you've got enough, you've been around long enough and seen enough things and know enough people that there's, like you said, endless stories to tell on here. And the exciting thing about this format is that people can chime in and maybe change the directions of these conversations, be able to input things that we're not getting to that they'd like to see. So.
Yeah. And I mean, like on that note, I want to encourage people who are tuning in. It looks like a bunch of people have tuned in. I really appreciate it. Use that live chat. If you scroll, if you're on the right hand, I don't know what everybody's screen looks like. So again, part of the show tonight, part of the low expectations of the show tonight is we're going to fuck a few things up as we learn how to use the software and figure how everything works. But I see on the right-hand side of my screen a live chat bar where I see as people are joining, and then I can see comments. Spencer just commented there. Yeah, I mean, other than Super Rookie, I'd like to encourage people to chime in.
It's always a caveat. Yeah.
I do, again, much like my other social media, I want things to be conversational. I think that is what I enjoy about social media. Bike racing is boring. I talk about bike racing.
So I think the question that's burning in everyone's brain right now, probably that's tuned in, is this a midlife crisis? Is that what's going on here?
There's no crisis. It's definitely midlife. Yeah, I mean, the show is part of my change in direction. I'm not sure I could have done the show the way I wanted while I was still racing full time, because as much as I have always had freedom to speak my mind on the teams that I've raced for, and directors who've signed me have always sort of known what they were getting themselves into, and I've always appreciated that. If I really want to speak freely, I can't be answerable to anybody in that sense. I have to be my own boss. And honestly, I wouldn't want to put anybody in that spot, you know? It was always a bummer when, you know, I'd get an email from my director who said, "Oh, hey, I got a call about something you said on the internet." and
so those aren't just stories around the campfire. That stuff happens. Like that followed you back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. It didn't happen frequently, but it happened occasionally, and it would happen, let's say once a year.
Okay.
On Smart Stop, I feel like it would happen once a year, and for all the faults there, and maybe all my complaints about the way things ended up. One thing Jamie Bennett did do that I appreciate, he did many things that I appreciate, but one of those things was he always defended me. He always had my back to sponsors or whoever thought that they could silence me. He would defend me. He would say, "Hey, Adam, Adam existed before this team. That's Adam's personal account. He's not speaking on behalf of the team." So he'd have my back, and I always really appreciated that. But that said, I always felt terrible about putting him in that spot. I don't want him to have to defend
now
me.
We're here, and you can make everybody feel terrible as much as you want. Yeah. And that's the goal. That's what
is not the goal. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. Jokes are only fun.
And this is a live show, so we're recording this live. We're going to archive it, and it'll be up later for iTunes and everything. But right now, and later, I guess when people listen, there's no do-overs. Like this is one take. This is one hot take. So
yeah. So you should expect us to misspeak. You should expect probably some adult language. I swear a lot in my normal everyday speech. I thought about that. Like, do I want to try and swear less? And I probably will swear less without even thinking about it. But I don't know. I swear in front of my mother. It's just, this is who we are. This is where we live. This is the way we talk. So I don't want to pretend not to be myself. I know sometimes language bothers people, but I hope they don't project onto me in that sense. Like Jeff Zietker does have me beat with the swearing. I even had to have a talking to. Jeff just commented that he has me beat with the swearing. Now, granted, Jeff is a recently retired Marine. He gets to swear as much as he wants, but he is also one of my coaching clients. And so I felt like for his benefit, I wanted him to save some of his energy.
Are the juniors listening? Is that a concern? How do you approach that? How about there's a sort of semi bike racing related question? Like,
Sure. The juniors are listening, and I believe I saw some of the juniors' parents join the call as well and are listening. So working with the Cannondale Sports New England team, it's now Cannondale Jingo Lingo, so they're a new co-sponsor. It has been really great. And one of the things that was great from the beginning was when they hired me, I definitely sat down with the parents and I said, do you know who I am? And I said it not in a like, do you know who I am? I said, like, are you sure you want me to work with your kids? You know, like, do you know what you're getting into? Do you know what you're exposing your kids to is essentially how I asked it. And, they were, see, I told you they were listening. They were all great. They were like, listen, our kids are adults, essentially, is sort of what they said. Like, our kids have heard it all. We know who you are, and we're fine with it. And I really appreciated that. Now, do I still pull up a little?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You know, like, I don't talk about my personal life exactly. With the kids. I actually talk about my personal life on social media a lot less than I used to. You know, I don't talk about like relationships or dating on social media. It's just, people just don't understand, and you get tired of explaining it. And it's also was not always the one talking about it. People would ask me questions and I was always happy to answer them. But, people just have their own ideas about like what open relationships are, and they usually are misconceptions, and you just don't always want to be having to explain that to people or have them be it's not always on my mind. I don't always want it to be on their mind. So yeah, it's just, Janice and I are just kind of as open as we are on social media. I think there are lots of ways that we're actually kind of discreet about our lives and just don't want to always have to explain ourselves to people. So yeah, we talk about that stuff less. You're talking about midlife crisis question is what we were starting to answer, and kind of got sidetracked there. But my life obviously has changed dramatically in the past 6 months. I had planned on retiring last season, no matter what, but I did have this idea of what my first year of retirement was going to be. I still expected, I was really looking forward to my first year retired because I had planned on training as much as I always did, but not having to. And I had planned on racing as much as I always did, but only going to the races that I wanted to. And just, I have a full-time job and I own a business, but it's flexible. I can take it with me. And I was going to continue to do that. And so I was going to shift it a little bit, but I was going to go on I wanted to go back and do the Milkross again. I wanted to do the Tour of Ireland again. There were like a couple things I wanted to give myself the freedom to do, some races that I hadn't done in a while that I wanted to go back to. And that's not what happened. We got pregnant instead. Yeah. And while that
I remember you making all these plans.
Oh my God. This is why I'm having such a hard time now. And I'm not sure I've ever really fully explained that. Like, the baby was intentional. Right. We planned the baby. We just didn't think it would happen on the first try. And that's basically what happened. Like, Janice got pregnant I said, we could open the window now. Yep. It'll probably take us a year or two to actually like make a baby. And we made a baby immediately at the first opportunity. So, and so I got no retirement. I went straight from my last race to full-time stay-at-home dad. And in so many ways, I couldn't be happier. I mean, I love being a dad. My kid is incredible. I feel like I got lucky, even though I don't exactly believe in luck. Flynn is an angel. I feel guilty about how great
Honestly,
he is.
When you had that baby, I was like, I can't wait for that baby to just ruin everything. And he thinks he's going to ride his bike all this time. But no, Flynn's been awesome. And I think he's made the transition as easy as possible for you, as far as the baby is concerned.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Like what I'm struggling with is I went from being a professional athlete to, sort of less than an amateur athlete, because I'm not just a stay-at-home dad. I'm running a business. Bill from Crosshairs described it as a work-at-home dad. That was the phrase that he used when I talked to him today. I'm not a stay-at-home dad. I'm a work-at-home dad. So I'm trying to run my business and work while take care of a kid 10 hours a day, and I'm getting some help now, like we have a sitter on Monday. Work-at-home dad. Yeah, there it is. I have a sitter on Monday for 8 hours because that's my busiest coaching day. I've been taking him to my mom's on Wednesday. She only lives 20 minutes away. And so that's, as babies sometimes do, it's allowed me to sort of re-engage with my family a little bit more. And Nana loves having Flynn there for the day. And so I work a half day on Wednesday, and that's my day that I can always train outdoors. But I mean, I went from training 35 hours a week to training 6 hours a week indoors at night. And
welcome to the real life. This is what we all do. I know you're having an epiphany.
Right. Well, it's not that I didn't know. It's not that I don't have clients that do that, but it has a physical impact on you to do that. I have lived my life a certain way for a long time, and I did that intentionally. I made a lot of sacrifices to do it, but I sleep until I wake up. I exercise outdoors in the sunshine. I go somewhere warm for the winter. I take naps. All these things that sound like luxuries may well be luxuries, but I traded something else to be able to live my life in that way. And I knew it wouldn't last forever. And I volunteered to trade it in. I didn't get the soft transition that I was looking for. So I'm struggling with the physical and, as a result, mental impact that change has. But the baby is a wonderful salve for that. If I'm bummed about anything, I make that baby laugh, and I don't have any problems anymore. But it's still, I can make that decision in my head. I can intellectualize it, but it's still. Do
you think the retirement would have been harder than with Flynn maybe a year from now or whatever? Like doing this without the baby, it would have been a rougher transition?
No, I think it would have been easier because it would have been less sudden, and there's no denying the baby, if you know what I mean. So the baby's a deadline. The baby's in front of you. The baby has to eat and be changed, and you doesn't matter what you want to do. If you love your baby, you take care of your baby. So if I could have eased out a little more, and I think it would have been good for Janice and I to have a year,
take a vacation and stuff,
retired. We barely had the chance to be a couple. I was busy racing bikes, and now we're raising a baby together. And any parent will tell you that it changes your romantic relationship. We're co-parenting right now. We're not the couple that we were before we had a kid, and how could we be? So that's a challenge too that every parent, every set of parents goes through. So it would have been good to have a year to transition more gently.
So we have a question here in the chat. Sean.
Yeah, I see that from Sean.
He's kind of asking about the timing of your retirement. It looks like, your participation in the sport over the years is kind of, you've seen that trajectory of popularity of cyclocross. And, like you said, your career had to end at some point. It's ending now during this kind of boom of cross. Like, do you leave like looking back and being like, wow, we came a long way? Or are you like, man, I wish it would have been this popular, when I was getting into it? Or, where does that leave you?
Yeah. So of course I wish I had been at my peak during a more mature period in the sport. But I'm 44 this year. You know, I'll be 44 in May. My racing age for cross is going to be 45. I mean, it's a miracle that I lasted as long as I did. And yeah, it is like the difference in my fitness right now from, you know, going from training 35 hours a week to training 6 hours a week and not sleeping through the night. Like you can imagine, it's a reminder of, that I'm not particularly talented and that my success in the sport came from a lot of hard work. I trained more than most people, and that's how I got my job done. And now that I'm not, it's like, whew, man. So what would I have done? Like, how do you capitalize? I'm not even the same cross rider. You know, I had my best cross results in my late 30s, which is a result of lifestyle changes even then, getting divorced and, you know, refocusing on training and racing. But I also, probably the hardest part of that is I know that I contributed to a lot of that change and growth as an organizer and promoter. And I know that doing that work also impacted my racing. You know, like I wasn't the best bike racer I could be because I was busy doing all this other shit. And I think Jeremy Powers has made that, I consider it a mistake, and Jeremy knows that's how I feel about it, made that mistake in the sense that Jeremy is so gifted. I always felt like he should just focus on his racing and not make the mistakes that I felt I did, which was to try to grow the sport at your own expense. I think Jeremy bumped up against that and then realized like, oh, okay, this is killing me. Like if I want to be fast, I can't do all this other stuff. But sometimes you got to do it to find out where that line is. So yes, for sure. Like so many things have happened that way in my career. Like I turned 23 the first year that there was an under 23 category. Like what a freaking bummer that was. Like I was always the first under 23 in all those races, but there was no under 23 category. And then eventually, you know, they make like an under 28 rule for like Division 3 teams where, you know, half your team has to be under the age of 28, but I didn't turn pro until I was 31. Right. So there's always been those little things like, what are you going to do? All in all, I liked my career. I like how it went. It took a long time to get to a place of peace with it, but it really ended on a high note. And I ended it sort of under my own power, finishing with the Stellas. Like, I'm so grateful for those guys, you know, to value me and to give me a place to finish my career, and to, you know, there was a spot there for me this year if I wanted to continue. So that was, I was treated so well there, and not just by the management, but by the other riders on the team. Treated with so much respect and appreciation for my experience in a way that I hadn't been the year previously. So it was a good, a good way to leave feeling good about things and not go out. I didn't want to go out bitter, that's for sure. You know, because that's how it went the first time.
All right. What else we got?
Yeah, and thanks, Sean, for that question. I appreciate it. You want to talk about Lars and Harry?
We did have that question.
You want to talk about bike racing? Yeah, we can talk about bike racing.
So Parabag is this weekend. You know, do you got a pick? How about that?
I talked to Bill a little bit. No, I'm not big on picking races. Like, I think it's weird when people have like favorites. Like, bike racing is not like that. You can have like 6 guys that are capable of winning, or, you know, like you can pick a handful of riders, but like, you know, the strongest guy very rarely wins in bike racing. So I don't like to pick winners. I will say that I love the way Sagan is riding right now, as does everybody. That's not unique. I don't have any special insight there. Even if I'm sometimes people mistake my analysis for criticism, especially if I'm fucking around on Twitter. So sometimes I consider what I do to just be analysis. Sometimes I'm being funny. Sometimes that's not obvious. But I like to do analysis of the races. And I don't think you need to have raced at that level or had that exact experience to be able to analyze it. It's a weird, when people make that argument, I'm just like, well, there are very few sports where, the best coaches have competed. Like, what football coach has gone to the Super Bowl? Like, it doesn't work that way. It's rare in most sports. In cycling, it's more common. There's this idea that you have to experience it to be able to teach it. But like, do you have to have cancer to be a cancer doctor? Do you want your heart surgeon to have had a heart attack?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I think that I know enough about bike racing and have enough of an analytical mind to watch what I'm watching and analyze it, and even to critique somebody's mistakes, even though, yes, I know perfectly well how difficult it is to execute tactics or make decisions when you're at your absolute limit. I don't have to do 300K races to know what that feeling feels like, right? So, I mean, you can call it like armchair analysis, but what if you're a music critic? Do you have to have been in a very successful band to be a rock critic?
You just gotta appreciate the music and
I mean, everyone hates music critics, though. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but yeah, exactly. You have to know what you're talking about enough to have an appreciation for it. You don't have to have the same ability to create, but like, I don't want to brew beer. I'm not a chemist. I find brewing very interesting. I like beer. I like the finished product. I can discuss it. I can pull out flavors. I can sound pretentious when I'm talking about beer, even when I'm being sincere. But I'm not a brewer, and I never will be, and I don't really need to. And so I think it's the same thing when we're analyzing bike races. So that said, I don't have a pick for Paris-Roubaix.
You just that was the biggest lead on ever.
I simply think that the standard Lars has to meet is Sven Nys bunny hopping a crashed rider. I think it was in Arenberg that it happened. I can't find the clip. But literally, I'm pretty sure it's in Arenberg. They're on the cobbles. Dude crashes in front of Sven Nys. He bunny hops him and keeps riding. It was amazing. How's Lars going to live up to that? That's the standard he's got to meet.
That's true.
Unfortunately for him.
I have no predictions about how Lars will do in his Paris-Roubaix. But there's other cyclocrossers that probably will do well. Stibar will be up there. I don't know if he's quite on the form we've seen him in the past, but like you alluded to, I don't think there's a race that necessarily rewards the guy with the best form always. Like, you have to have enough form to be there, but there's a lot of luck involved and a lot of just tactics and different factors that are going to play in there.
Yeah.
Which is...
Stibar would have a Paris-Roubaix under his belt if he didn't get whacked by
an unknown photographer that we won't mention.
I know who the photographer is. And I won't mention it. That secret goes to the grave.
It's a good question. How will Phil do at Paris-Roubaix? Phil Gammon.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was obviously teasing Phil today, but man, I'm so pumped for him. When I first tweeted at him that, like, I hope it's not Paris-Roubaix, like, I actually didn't seriously think that it could be Paris-Roubaix. And lo and behold, he's going to Paris-Roubaix, which is amazing. And I think back to, like, when Meatball went to Paris-Roubaix, Mike Friedman got to do Paris-Roubaix. Like, it was really awesome because it was like, oh, my friends are racing Paris-Roubaix. Like, a dude that I race with every weekend is going to Paris-Roubaix. You know, it was amazing. It let you know, like, the level had really come up so much in the US, and like, you know, we were sort of having an impact there. And then, you know, when like UHC got into Paris-Roubaix, you know, it was amazing. Like, I'm racing with Brad White like every weekend, and he's one of the guys I have like the most respect for in American bike racing. Like, I love that guy. Like, he works so hard. He's got a family, he owns a bike shop. And he's very quiet, and nice. He's a very kind guy, and he just smashes it. He works so hard. And I always get a lot of motivation and inspiration from him. I was impressed at what he does. And then he rode Paris-Roubaix, you know, like he went from like doing like NCC races, and then he rode Paris-Roubaix, and then came back and did the rest of the NCC. That was amazing. It was so awesome. Yeah. And he finished, you know, like, and that's his personality. Like, no fucking way was he not getting to the finish line. So, I have so much respect for him. And so in a way it's the same thing. Like, so now Phil, you know, like, that's how bike racing goes, right? People get injured and you happen to be free that weekend, and next thing you know, you're on a plane. Yeah. I think that happens at the Pro Tour level pretty regularly. And sometimes that's how guys get like chewed up and spit out too. Like, they either like don't race at all, or when they do race, it's like, I think Evan Huffman had that experience when he was in Europe. Like, he only raced like 20 days. So Phil obviously has a program. He's a real rider on the team. But yeah, he had an open weekend and they needed a rider. So how far is he going to go? I mean, I didn't actually talk to him other than teasing him, as psyched as I am for him. But yeah, you have to assume that his job will be from the start until the Arenberg Forest. Like, I imagine they will use him as much as they possibly can until the first set of cobbles. And my guess will be that he'll be free to back off at that point if that's how it goes. I don't think they will have any expectations of him beyond that. And that's not a knock on Phil and Phil's talent. I mean, you wouldn't ask a field sprinter to take a guy to the top of a climb, I guess, unless it's George Hincapie in U.S. Postal Service. But generally speaking, you don't ask field sprinters to do climbers' jobs. Is Hincapie going to
be a thing on this podcast too? Because we mention him every week on ours.
I was wondering what that was all about. Maybe he'll come on as a guest. It's not like we're not old friends. Maybe we've had a couple conversations about needing to have a conversation, you know, needing to sit down and have a talk. Maybe we'll do it on the podcast. There's a few guys who should come on and have a conversation with me if we really want to get nostalgic, you know. I think there's a few guys that owe me a conversation. We'll see if we can get some of those guys on. That'll be something.
Something to look forward to for sure.
Yeah. So we got a couple other questions here in the chat. We got Sean's answered, and then it looks like Andrew Fry at one is my director from Estella's, Andrew Fry. What years were the highest level of crit racing during your career? That is not an easy thing to answer, because when I was like 15 and started, like, the first pro race I watched was the Wheat Thins Mayor's Cup in Harvard Square. It's amazing to think about even now. Like, they shut down Harvard Square for a criterium. The next time it happened was for Collegiate Nationals, which I actually got to do in 93. So that was really special for me. I mean, Harvard Square is a place that I hung out on my skateboard in high school, you know? And so to get to race bikes there was incredible. So to get to watch a bike race there, very brief history of the Wheat Thin series, people who don't know, like in the 80s, all the best riders in America were racing in what is now like the equivalent of the USA Crit Series or the NCC. And they were racing for $10,000 criteriums. Prize lists were $10,000 in the late 80s. the prize lists were $10,000. So think about that. There were $1,000 preems. I mean, they were making so much money. And then I finally turned pro, and I'm on the circuit 20 years later, and we're still racing for $10,000. So finally that prize money went up to $15,000, and that was some progress. And then they made the prize money equal with men and women, and they took some down from the men. So it was $1,250 for men, $1,250 for women, which was the right thing to do. I was personally happy to give up some of our prize list so the women had an equal prize list. That's what parity means. We had a moment where like Charlotte was $150,000 in prize money the first year. And that was like, okay, we're finally getting there. Like we finally have a race, not just Philly, but a criterium with $150,000 prize list. And I thought, okay, we're going to start making real money now. But instead of the economy continuing in that direction and the prize lists continuing to go up, that prize list dropped year after year after year. And I think it's $25,000 now. And part of why it dropped, I think, is because his sponsorship dropped, but also I think he realized he didn't have to give $150,000 away. If he's the only one giving $150,000 away, like maybe he should keep some of that money. Maybe he should make sure that the race has like a budget for a couple years in a row so it continues to happen. I don't know the details. I'm that's all conjecture, but and now it's $25,000, and $25,000 is a bigger prize list than almost every other race. It's still one of the highest prize lists. But so the point there, and to get back to Andrew's question, is like, when was the high point? I think it was better before I started. I think the 90s were terrible. Even though we were still racing for $10,000, like the economy was bad. There were no teams. There were all these pros racing for free on teams like Guiltless Gourmet or there were so many teams where good guys were racing for free, Monex, tons of teams like that. And even when I finally turned pro, it was the same way. I mean, my first contract was for $2,000, it wasn't really it was a pro team, but $2,000 is not a salary. It took a couple of years before I got a salary that I could live off of. But then the prize list started to get better. And I would say these past few years, when the NRC and the NCC split, the NCC, in my mind, got really good and something that you could make a living off of. If you could get a contract that was good enough to just go to the races and you were someone who could consistently get top 10, you make $1,000 a week. And that's not getting rich or anything, but that's a nice job,
So does that change now that the NCC and the NRC have kind of come back together, right?
Yeah. And so before we go to that real quick, there's another question there about making real money means you can quit the day job. Yeah, that's what I would say. If you can live off bike racing, then you're making a living, and that dollar amount is different for different people. We always joked about the 12K dream. If you just make $1,000 a month in salary, that'd be enough for you to quit your job. And that was true. And for me, that was the line. It was my third year as a pro that I finally got a $12,000 contract, but I'd already had my coaching business at that point. So I had a little bit of security. But if you're someone who can make prize money,
looks like Adam went away. Technical difficulties.
Bumped myself, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm surprised the call didn't go away since you started it.
Yeah, interesting. It continued on, and I was able to unlock the seat that I had locked and join back in.
Good to know.
So I'm not sure when I cut out. I saw that I was gone, but where was I when I disappeared?
Oh, you were in the middle of some monologue.
We were trying to answer the question about making real money means you can quit.
$12,000 a year, and when you got that contract, and
so that amount is different for different people, but eventually, like, I had a mortgage, and so real money for me in my 40s was very different than what real money for the 20-year-olds on my team was. And my contracts, it's funny, my best contracts came in the last 3 years of my career. Like my salaries generally went up and up and up right until the end of my career. It's locked out, buddy. Bill just said, lock out that other seat before Super Rookie tries to call in. It's locked. We're safe. We're safe. Oh, Jesus, I thought I locked it. That was you unlocking it. Can you unlock it? Do you have power over the third seat? Oh.
No, I can't do anything.
Oh, no, it's unlocked. I just locked it. I thought I had locked it.
That was somebody's chance.
Yeah, I know. Someone tried to call in and then quit.
This is fun.
So I guess we answered Andrew's question. How many years did I race without health insurance? That is a good question.
Man, come on. I'm not even pro and I race without health insurance.
I know. Well, so I went to college generally one semester a year, and I would take the spring semester off. I always was chipping away at college every semester. And so I would have, you got a guest, Spencer? Someone?
I don't know what that was.
I would have health insurance when I was in school. And then, not only did I not have health insurance when I wasn't in school, there were years where I didn't even, like when my car wasn't even registered. I was really living hand to mouth, like using prize money from one race to pay the entry fee into the next race. I lived like that for a long time. And I literally drove like an unregistered, uninsured car for 3 years, just trying to stay out of trouble and get to the races. So like health insurance, yeah, like fortunately I don't crash very often, but man, that was ridiculous. So I didn't really get health insurance until I got married the first time. And then when I had my business, I was buying health insurance through like the National Association of the Self-Employed. So that's how I had health insurance for a while. Then Mitt Romney gave me health insurance, which was fabulous. Thank God for the state of Massachusetts. Sorry, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Romney Care was incredible. And I had good health insurance for $250 a month through Romney Care. And unfortunately, like Obamacare ruined Massachusetts state healthcare. It was a very good system. It worked really well for us, but it had to get abandoned in order for us to join the national plan. And of course, the national plan was a compromise. Now, fortunately, I'm married to Janice and she works at Boston University, and I have really good health insurance now. Thank you. Thank you, BU. But
you have completed the master's trifecta there. You've got everything.
Yeah. No, it's taken me until my mid 40s to have the things that most of my peers managed to get done, by their mid 30s. Like I leveraged 10 years to keep racing and keep doing what I was doing, or to go back to it and have the career that I sort of thought that I should have had in my 20s. I didn't have it till I was in my 30s. But yeah, so most of my career I didn't have health insurance. And when I did, I broke my collarbone once in Rhode Island. I think I had a hospital visit for that I applied for some indigent care grants, and I don't think I paid very much for it. There's a follow-up question there about like, what does racing cross as a pro mean for you, salary rise with a family now? I'm not a pro. The answer to that is I'm retired, and for the past couple of seasons, no one was paying for my cross season anyway. Maybe I had some equipment sponsors that also were giving me some cash, but anytime you saw me racing in Cycle Smart kit for cross, it meant that my equipment sponsors were sort of carrying the load for me, that I didn't have a title sponsor. It meant that I was paying my own expenses to race. But as often the case, like even with the Stellas, I had a 12-month contract. So I got a salary from the Stellas through January 1st. And so they paid me through the cross season, but gave me the freedom to wear different kit. So you could say that in a sense, the Stellas still was paying for me to race, but everybody was getting paid, even the guys who weren't racing. You know, I could have stayed home and collected that check because you get a 12-month contract. A few years on Mountain Khakis, we got separate cross contracts. Myself, Travis Liverman, either because we did something through Mock Orange with the shop and so did his second team, or there was a year that it was included. On Nirac, cross was part of my contract for me and Chris Jones. The other guys had 10-month contracts, but we had 12-month contracts. So, I mean, so the best answer to that question is how it's changed now is, you know, I own a coaching company and that's my primary source of income. And I did have to plan for the loss of income starting January 1. You know, I no longer was going to get a paycheck from pro cycling. And I basically took on more coaching clients, personal coaching clients. So we're really focused on growing the business right now. But for myself personally, I went from, you know, five personal coaching clients to 10, and taking on those 5 extra clients is, you know, it's the 20 hours a week less that I'm not training. You know, I work more, I sit at my desk more, sometimes with a baby, usually with a baby, as my clients will tell you. Flynn is often on the calls.
That's a benefit to me. I'd pay a premium.
He's learning. He likes watching the screen. He'll sit in my lap while I'm typing. If I can hold him up and he's just watching my screen. I feel like a terrible parent, honestly, when I'm doing it. Does
he have a Twitter account yet? Have you reserved that for him just to like gift him on like his 10th birthday or something?
Having a hashtag for him feels pretentious enough. I did notice, I don't know if you remember about a month ago with all the when the yoga girls took over the bicycling Instagram and the flap about that.
Yeah.
That one of the women involved in that and her partner have some acro yoga thing, and someone in there is expecting a baby. They started an Instagram for the unborn baby. That is one of the creepier things I've encountered. Creepy and self-absorbed and they were posting pictures and writing in the unborn child's voice.
Okay.
They were posting posts from his account. He was not born yet. He was like, "Oh, my daddy is doing this with my mommy now."
So I'm glad you didn't take it there.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right.
Yeah.
So
he doesn't have an Instagram. He does have a folder on Facebook. If we tag him in a picture, it's a
great folder, I gotta say. I flip through there every once in a while. Candace is a good photographer.
Yeah.
So we're creeping up on the hour mark here. I don't know what you want to do. We've got a couple of unanswered questions, or I don't know if you want to leave people hanging or what.
No, let's see if I can get those out. So to answer that, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to race Masters Cross. I might still race Elites. I haven't decided, but whatever I do, it's going to be for fun. Seeing how difficult it's been to get into shape this spring compared to past springs right now, I didn't think I was going to be racing Masters at all, but I feel very much like a master, so we'll see.
So as an amateur cyclist, I can give you a tip here for how you can decide if you're going to race the pro field or the masters field. Is you just go to the site called crossresults.net, and you can kind of see where the good guys are going, and you go to the other field. You know.
Yeah. I thought with cross results you just entered and you could just stay home because you can see what your result is going to be. So you just do that. Say, "Oh, I would have gotten this place if I went." So I'm just going to
there's that. But if you don't go, you don't get points, and then you drop down lower next time. It's a whole mess. They got to fix that part of it, but otherwise, it works pretty well.
I mean, I found that just racing is, I like to race. Spend a little less time on cross results.
All right.
Sorry, Colin.
You're going to learn about it.
Yeah.
Now that you're retired.
I hear you guys jabbering about it. And then...
this is a great question.
Were you going to go to Emily's or Sean?
Yes.
Yeah.
This might take longer than a couple minutes.
I know. So what I think is, I think bike racing is so beautiful, and I have so much passion for it. And I think I'm excited for my kid to grow up in the sport and have this become a family activity for me. And I think you see that especially in cross. It is so family oriented, and I'm excited to go to the cross races with my family. And so if he wants to race bikes, I mean, great, you know, and I just think, I don't know. I just don't know how he won't fall in love with it. But I'm certainly not going to push him if he wants to skate. You know, I want to do things with my kid, you know, I want to be activity partners with my kid. But I just want to accommodate his interests and his passion. And if that turns out to be bike racing, great. But I mean, honestly, like I might not even survive this season. I already have had days where I'm like, what am I doing? Why aren't I on my skateboard? So I don't see any reason to steer him away from bike racing. I'm not afraid of like doping pressure or all the negative things that go with bike racing. Like bike racing's the best thing that ever happened to me. So
that's good.
All said and done. So,
all right.
The last thing I'm going to do if I go to Rasputista is put a costume on and stand out in the cold. So that is not a rumor.
Which
is only
going to fuel that rumor further now.
The Rasputista guys did tell me that they'd be excited to have me come up, but I think that's going to be a good weekend to. I have to remember, like, I don't have to race every weekend. Like when there's an open weekend, I shouldn't go looking for something to do.
Yeah.
I should go to brunch.
Absolutely, brunch is awesome, and you can grind gravel any day of the week, right?
Is that a euphemism? I don't.
Could
yeah,
be.
But yeah, no, right. Like, I'm a white guy in the city. I'm supposed to go to brunch on the weekend.
I'm going to tell you, the rumors are true. It's all it's cracked up to be.
I mean, that's been the main downfall in your form is a girlfriend brunch.
It's brutal.
But what I don't understand is your girlfriend's only gotten faster since she started dating you. So what's your problem?
That is also far too much to fit into the end of this show. So we might have to leave it there.
End it there. I think that works.
Wrap this thing up.
Well, thanks, Spencer. And
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
For tuning in. Yeah. And so, Spencer, where will we look for the playback?
Yeah. So what we're doing is I'm going to try and slap this together and get it up at wideanglepodium.com. Hopefully this weekend. I don't know how long this first one will take to get pieced together, but we're going to do these Thursday nights, or you're going to do these Thursday nights. I won't be back. Next
might
week.
have a little bit of flexibility for a guest or, you know, but generally speaking, I think this is a good time that I can lock in.
Yeah. And so if you record them on a Thursday night, they should generally be up on iTunes and wideanglepodium.com, hopefully the following day. So people that aren't able to tune in can download it and listen later. So it should work out really well. And we're looking forward to that. So Wide Angle Podium has a bunch of other great shows on it. My show, the Slow Ride Podcast, Crosshairs Radio, the Honest Bicycle Program, and Kids Don't Follow are all on there. They're all great podcasts. So, you know, we're all excited to have you on. I think you're going to be in good company. And if people haven't checked out those shows, they definitely should. They're all great.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next week.
All right. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.